Welcome back to Progressive Pulse. The scandals at the U.S. Department of Defense continue unabated, and unsurprisingly, Pete Hegseth is once again in the spotlight. Under the shadow of incompetent officials who are more focused on ideological battles than doing their jobs, a new crisis has erupted at the Pentagon. At the center of this crisis is a figure who has been removed from his position and has openly declared his support for Trump. However, before diving into all the details, I would be very grateful if you could like this video and subscribe to Progressive Pulse. Your support is truly invaluable. Now let's begin with that striking moment on Fox News, where a CNN reporter clearly exposed the situation at the Pentagon.
You posted this about Pete Hegseth on your Substack, saying you feel tremendous sadness at the changes he's made. Explain.
I do. It's completely unnecessary. Reporters for decades have operated inside the Pentagon, moving through the hallways, and of course they talk to sources. Hegseth is worried that it is unauthorized information. That's conversation. That's reporting.
But the suggestion here is that your reporters, of which you were one for decades, are looking to vacuum up secret or classified documents by walking in those halls.
Impossible to do. Reporters have no access to classified areas. Those are locked. I'm not aware of any instance in which a reporter has accessed classified information in the Pentagon by moving through the hallways and going into classified areas. Hegseth is embarrassed. He's embarrassed by certain events. He's embarrassed by there's so much exposure to the information classified by all accounts that he posted on Signalgate about that air attack in Yemen. He's embarrassed that information came out that he was going to meet with Elon Musk and brief him on China. Even today, as you and I sit here and talk, the Ukrainians are bombing Russian strategic bombers deep inside Russia. Could be a response by Putin. Maybe the Defense Secretary wants to think, it's up to him, about spending more time thinking about these national security matters than the PR structure, if you will, of his press operation.
Well, of course, Secretary Hegseth has dismissed as a distraction the whole business about Signalgate. And by the way, we asked for a response from the Pentagon, didn't get any response at all. He has also held the grand total of one news conference since taking over at DOD. Does that matter?
It matters. And it's a great question. Why is this so important? Why is this
the average person out there saying what?
A lot of people
don't
don't like the news media. Here's the bottom line. The U.S. military swears an oath to defend the Constitution, the First Amendment. That includes nothing to abridge freedom of the press. So this is a life and death issue for the U.S. forces, and that makes it a life and death issue for the media, which often accompanies them. This is about the constitutional requirement to maintain a free press in this country. That is what America's all about. So let me just offer this thought. The next time U.S. troops, all geared up for combat, board some transport plane in the middle of the night to go somewhere, the Pentagon press corps is going to do its job as it does every day. They will be there. They will cover it as the World Press Corps was. Nobody's going away.
Orders we give to the plans we discuss. There's a reason why our nation's most closely held secrets are contained in certain places with only access from certain people. Nobody takes that more seriously than me. If there's one thing I've sort of been offended by, I don't get offended by much. I'm here to do my job for the president, for the country, is this idea that I don't take classification or I don't take clearances seriously. Nobody takes it more seriously than me. And we make sure that's infused through how we operate. And we do everything we can to deliver on behalf of the American people that way.
I mean, journalists have been freely roaming around the Pentagon for years, talking to their sources, reporting. This is nothing new. But to suddenly panic about the danger of classified information? Come on. This is the new normal of the post-Trump state reflex. Fear transparency, declare the media the enemy, then hide behind the shield of national security. Hegseth is embarrassed, they say, because the Yemen attack was leaked, the China talk with Elon Musk was leaked. Maybe it was the meeting itself that was embarrassing, antagonizing the press, criminalizing journalism, which is the lifeblood of democracy. This is how authoritarianism comes. The Minister of Defense held only one press conference. Only once. Imagine, an institution that swore allegiance to the Constitution sees the press as a threat. The cruelty is the point, isn't it? Why does this matter? Because a government that is afraid of the truth only wants to hear its own lies. And we cannot simply call this freedom.
Are empowered by law to make very minor, very specific, very temporary changes in tariffs for specific products for a very short period of time. But that's not what Donald Trump did. He put a 10% tariff on the entire planet. Congress could do that. They could pass an economically idiotic 10% tariff on the entire world. But even the Republican Congress isn't that stupid. The Republican Congress is not as stupid as Donald Trump about tariffs. And so Donald Trump has launched into his tariff madness alone, the only president in history to have done so. And with an exclamation point, the utterly lost occupant of the White House tells us that the presidency would never be the same if we actually restore, through sane court decisions, presidential power to what it has always been from the day George Washington took the oath of office. Donald Trump's permanently smiling and totally incompetent economic advisor who never achieved tenure in his brief career as a low-level economics professor before becoming Donald Trump's economics professor in residence, took his frozen smile to friendly television interviewers today by saying that the ruling by the Court of International Trade will not have any impact at all on the Trump team's so-called trade negotiations around the world, in which they promised to deliver 90 trade deals in 90 days and have not yet delivered a single trade deal, not one. And while the childish, by standards of the economic profession, Kevin Hassett, was publicly spewing his nonsense about a court ruling against the Trump tariffs having no effect on the countries that the Trump team is trying to negotiate with, of course, the Trump team was in court putting in writing exactly the opposite. The other point that the Trump lawyers had to convince the appeals court of today in order to obtain a stay was that if they didn't obtain a stay, their side of the case would suffer what the law considers irreparable harm, while insisting that the plaintiffs would suffer no harm because the government will simply refund to them the Trump tariff money if they win. The Trump lawyers insisted that Donald Trump was already suffering harm to his so-called trade negotiations by the ruling of the Court of International Trade, because it takes away what the Trump lawyers called the credible threat. That was their phrase, credible threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, which means that, quote, foreign counterparts will have reduced incentives to reach meaningful agreements. The Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, and U.S. Trade Representatives similarly explained that the trade negotiations currently ongoing with dozens of countries are in a delicate state and could be shattered by an injunction against the tariffs. So there was the smiling clown of Trump economic policy on television, telling you the ruling by the court has no effect at all on their negotiations with other countries, while at exactly the same time, the Trump Justice Department lawyers are in court telling the appeals court that the negotiations with other countries have been shattered by the court ruling against the Trump tariffs. Quote, those negotiations are premised on the ability of the president to impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Trump wakes up one morning and says, let's put a 10% tax on the world. Reason? Unknown. The logic? No. Because the law allows only small, temporary, narrow tariffs, but this guy imposed tariffs on the whole planet. Even Congress said, that's too much. I mean, think about it. If even the Republican Congress says this is ridiculous, where are you at? But for Trump, it's not about the economy. It's a show of power, threats, blackmail, make a deal or I'll beat you mentality. Even the man's economic advisor, who hasn't even lasted a recess in his academic career, comes out and says, the court decision is ineffective. At the same time, Trump's lawyers are crying in court that this decision has ruined the negotiations. Both on the same day, same administration. One lies, the other lies bigger. This is not coordination. This is lack of control. It's chaos. Trump style. I mean, friends, the man has nothing to do with economics. He doesn't know diplomacy. He doesn't read the laws. But he is president. He thinks he is a master of negotiation, but all he does is threaten other countries. If you don't make a deal, I will tax you. Is that strategy? And then he comes out and says, we won. What victory? What deal? There was a promise of 90 deals in 90 days, not one. But the problem is not just incompetence. The problem is openly deceiving the public. One thing is said on TV, the opposite is said in court. This is not just lying. This is disrespect for democracy. Trump is lost in the White House, just like he has no idea what he is really doing. Even Nixon is honest next to him. And here's the important thing. Why does this matter? Because the presidency is not a reality show where you satisfy your personal ambitions. And what this tells us is this. Ignorance combined with incompetence is not just funny. It's dangerous. It bothers me to think about how the world sees us, but that's exactly why we need to speak up, to show that America is not just about Trump. That's what we at Progressive Pulse are trying to do, every day, every video. If you want to amplify that voice, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, leave a blue heart in the comments and share it so more people can hear it. Because this country is too precious to surrender to authoritarianism. See you in the next video. Take care.